rise. Roll call, please. Councilmember Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Collings.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Sackleth.
Here.
Mayor Kluwer.
Here, we have no special presentations, so we will move to public comment. Anyone wanting to speak on anything not on the agenda, please come forward and speak.
City council meeting, I described snowballs being thrown at my dog, Athena, a young male stranger with camera in hand, and myself. This behavior came as a result of noticing and objecting to two vehicles parked on the sidewalk on the 300 block of Chestnut Street. I had called Mount Shasta PD twice. Their response was observed by myself from the northwest corner of Lake Street and Chestnut. A half hour or so later, I watched Artie being chauffeured in his vehicle to the two parking locations, twice and slowly. Neither Artie or his chauffeur left their vehicle. The illegal parking remained overnight. No one in this room could even imagine this being allowed for even 5 minutes on blessed 300 block of the boulevard. Chestnut, no problem. Months later, while gardening, my familiar neighbor salutes me once again from across the street. Within a few minutes, a police officer approaches me in my front yard. He informs me a neighbor has complained about my music coming from my parked truck adjacent to my property, which I am loading. He tells me to shut it off, which I quickly do. A few nights later, around midnight, I am awakened by the loud, pounding music coming out of the open back door of the Vets Club. I call Mount Shasta PD, where the lady informs me that the city does not have a noise ordinance and there is nothing the police can do. She then suggests I go directly to the bar to make my complaint. Her advice was shocking and frankly dangerous. Unfortunately, I live in a city with two sets of law enforcement, one for the boulevard, one for Chestnut, one for my neighbor, one for me. The police department enforces this unequal arrangement.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come up to speak to public comment?
Hi.
Hello.
I actually am coming here for the exact opposite reason. I'm here to throw more parties.
Can you state your name?
My name's Tara Shuttleworth. I'm an event producer. I am very interested in getting an art walk back into Mount Shasta. When I was in Seattle, I was throwing the art walk in one of the neighborhoods, Wallingford, so I'm very I've done this before. I've also produced multiple community events within Seattle, Washington. I'm wanting to bring it here. And so one, I'd probably be speaking with you, correct, Todd, about putting on art walk?
You're at the right body to talk about. It all comes down to how it's funded and what it involves.
Okay, so I would shoot you an email about it?
I think you should air it here and talk about what the art walk is.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say to you is I'm interested. I think my next step is to go and talk to the other businesses about my ideas, see if they're interested. The one issue I'm having here in Mount Shasta is Mount Shasta wants me to state that I live somewhere in this space. And so where I live in my studio apartment, my landlord feels very uncomfortable about saying that I do business out of his studio apartment, which rightly so. He doesn't know if he's going to get taxed on it, anything. And so if I was to have residency in, let's say, Stockton, California, and I came up here and wanted to start producing events here in Mount Shasta, could I apply for a business license here with a Stockton residential address? I can do that? All right. And so my art walk would be bringing the businesses together. What I'm looking at doing is having each month be a theme that the businesses coincide with, and then the art can be different. I'm looking to support Siskiyou County artists in addition to surrounding areas, but definitely with a focus on our county. And I was looking at the end of June to October. So would I speak with you?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wish to come up to speak to public comment? Anyone online? All right, we will close public comment, move on to council and staff comments. Todd?
Yes. The first item tonight is the Enhanced Infrastructure Finance District. I got an audience with the Board of Supervisors, went to speak in front of them last week. Supervisor Valenzuela was helpful in getting, time in front of the board. And, there was one supervisor who was dead set against it, doesn't really know much about it. And there were 4 that weren't provided background information beforehand, and just didn't know enough about it, so it was tepid, but they're willing to hear more. And so we are going to line up Cosmont, and I'll be there to present as well at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, and I'm meeting with the county executive tomorrow morning to start planning that presentation. So we're still alive, and we'll see where we are. It's kind of a, not to sell this group, it's sort of a no-brainer. One of the things that wasn't shared are the projections of what the county would net if they participate at a low, medium, and high level, and there really is no risk. If on the off chance there was no development in EIFD, whatever properties we include, you just close the district and just, start from scratch. But ultimately, it could mean millions of dollars for the county in tax revenue without much risk. So that's in progress. The next is the old hospital. We were in a place where we're a day from having the old hospital placed into receivership, and we were informed by the Bay Area Receivership Group that they believe there's negative equity in the property, given that there is asbestos and other things to remediate. And so we don't really know exactly what the cost is to tear that structure down, but they believe it's about $200,000. They have estimates that the property is worth about that. I've got estimates from Brett Waite that it could be higher, more like $250,000. So either way, it's a wash. So what we're going to do is we've written a brief to bring to the postponed hearing, which will be heard on May 18th, that we'll have an amended order, and we'll say that it will put the onus on the owner to tear down the property within 90 days or show that they've hired somebody and have it on the books for tearing that property down. If he doesn't, we can start fining him $500 a day. And after that 90 days, he will be personally liable not only for that $500 per day that he's fined, but also for the receivership fees, city time, and our attorney time. And we'll make sure that which I suspect he's using it as a tax write-off, that stops. And then after that 90 days, if he doesn't comply, we'll issue a contempt order. And we'll use safety code, California Health and Safety Code 17995, which allows us to appoint a receiver to the property. And then we can attach and take other properties the owns in the community to pay these debts off. That's what I've got.
Great, thank you. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Next week, May 15th through May 21st, is National Police Officer Memorial Week. For this year, so far in the line of duty, there's been 36 police officers killed in the line of duty, as well as 6 canine officers killed in the line of duty just in 2023. May 9th, tomorrow, between 12:15 and 12:45, Siskiyou County will be doing their own memorial presentation on the at the old courthouse on the steps where the Peace Officer Memorial is located. So if anybody's up in Wairika tomorrow, we will be holding this ceremony. Mount Shasta Police Department has 2 officers that have died in the line of duty since the inception. So Officer Gary Fitzgerald, whose end of watch was July of 1939, excuse me, and Chief Davenport, whose end of watch was February of 1942, will both be honored during the ceremony.
Thank you very much. Council, anything to share? No?
I just have some questions for Todd. Todd, we've talked several times about certificates of completion for the water projects, the Tank 1 water project with the water line going south of town and Pine Street water project. Are they, since the weather is, well, it's kind of getting a little warmer, but will they be able to finish by June, end of June, or what's?
That's the last word I heard from Ken. I can give you an update tomorrow on where we're at in case there was some hiccup that I don't know, but yes. Okay,
so we have to vote on this, apparently. We've done it several times, except the certificate of completion. So then, the other thing that worries me is the sanitary sewer collection system evaluation being done by National Plant Services. They were in town, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago at this point, and they were here for a while. But according to Rod Bryan, they were supposed to show up yearly for 10 years and evaluate the collection system. That would be the laterals and so forth, and we would fix them accordingly. Is that on hold? Because that was a court settlement.
I don't know.
The group that sued us probably cares, so.
I will find out tomorrow.
River Watch?
Yeah.
River Watch down in San Francisco, I think. Yeah, a heads up on that.
Thank you. That's news to me.
I also saw that our fire chief, Duncan, may have done some fire training over this last week. Is that, yeah? Okay. Committee updates, anything to share?
Yeah, the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee is actually making progress. We have the Flower of Life statue. We've got engineering drawings on how it will be mounted. It's extremely heavy. The group is hiring someone to actually carry the plinth there and then load and attach the statue. We have the go-ahead from Pac Power for the Powerbox art contract, and I've sent that off to Pac Power for signature. There's still talk about wanting to expand the district, but as I mentioned to them, they've got to go through a formal vote process of anybody that may be in that district to see if they want to participate. And that's something that when they're ready to do that, that we talk with John Kenny, our city attorney. And what else? They're holding an event over the summer, and they're having beer and food and whatnot, and it's mountain bike related. So they're just rocking and rolling.
Great. All right, moving on to agenda item number 7, consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, April 24th, 2023, regular city council meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable 4/25/23, total gross payroll and taxes for periods ending 4/16 and 4/30/2023. C, monthly police report, April 2023.
Move to approve consent agenda items A through C by title only.
Second.
All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. And number 8, first reading of ordinance CCO-23- Okay. For Chapter 19.03 of the City of Mount Shasta Muni Code, Parklet Dining. Todd.
So the reason for the continuance and another first reading of the hearing is we had numerous comments at the last city council meeting. All those comments have been incorporated into the document, and I think we're ready to roll on it unless somebody else has additional comments.
Okay. Any questions from council? All right, we'll open up for a public hearing. Anyone from the audience wish to come up to speak? And anyone online? All right, we will close public hearing and back to council for discussion or motion.
No discussion? I'm satisfied that all the changes were made,
Yeah, I went through them. They're
line to line, right? And if no one from the public, namely restaurateurs that might be affected by this, are not here to say anything, I will move to approve the first reading of ordinance CCO-23 to be determined, modifying chapter, or adding chapter 19.03 of the Mount Shasta Municipal Code regarding parklet dining to a second reading 2 weeks from today. By title only.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And agenda item number 9, first reading of CCO-23- to be determined, amending Mount Shasta Municipal Code Section 6.04, garbage, refuse, and solid waste. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Staff was directed by Council to address the issue of people and businesses illegally dumping in the small trash cans located down in the downtown business district. The trash cans provided in this area are there as a convenient place for visitors, pedestrians, and shoppers to deposit small amounts of trash that you would get from shopping in our local stores. They're not designed to hold personal garbage and business trash. The use of these trash cans for their own personal garbage has led to the overflowing of garbage, bad smells, the need to continually and frequently empty the trash cans. The proposed amendment to the Mount Shasta Municipal Code would add Section B, which would make it an infraction to throw or deposit any household or business trash, as defined by California Health and Safety Code 117670. into any of the city-provided trash cans located specifically in the downtown area as defined by the Mount Shasta Municipal Code.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All right, we will open up for public hearing. Anyone from the audience wish to speak? Come on up.
Hi, I'd like to speak. So I think a lot of that issue has to do with our transient community here in Mount Shasta, which is about ready to increase. We know that throughout the summer, we get a whole bunch of people that are living up on the mountain. And one thing I do notice, I do spend a lot of time down here at this park. I do think closing the public bathrooms, I think minimizing trash cans is at detriment to our city. I would like to open up a discussion of what can we do with this transient community that benefits our city. One idea is to get somebody, I would be happy to be a volunteer because I know a lot of these people, is to say, welcome to our city. We have public bathrooms for you. We have multiple trash cans everywhere. We ask that you volunteer your services over the summer to improve what we have going on here. One of those ways is I'm looking at like the trailheads and everything. We've got tons of people that are needed up on our trailheads to clear our trailheads. I think if we got these people coming into our city, using our city, and basically taking from our city, if we develop a partnership with them where, in exchange for this beautiful place called Mount Shasta, we ask that you volunteer your services, and these are multiple ways that you can do it. And I think that we would find a better connection with these people and less issues that we have right now with trash and vagrants and all of that.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Anyone online? All right, we'll close public hearing. Back for council for discussion or motion.
Does anybody have a problem with this? No? Okay. All right. So I'll move to approve the first reading of CCO-23- to be determined, amending Mount Shasta Municipal Code Section 6.04 regarding garbage refuse and solid waste by title only.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, agenda item number 10, another first reading of CCO-23 to be determined, amending Mount Shasta Municipal Code, Section 12.08, repair and maintenance of sidewalks. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the April 24th City Council meeting, staff was directed to make amendments to the current Mount Shasta Municipal Code regarding repair and maintenance of sidewalks. Essentially, we were given direction to enhance the rights and the privileges of the citizens of Mount Shasta and go above and beyond what the state of California requires. This would allow the property owners to have a first 30-day to either show that the repair has been done or that contract services have been retained. It would then give them a second 30-day period if they fail to meet their first 30-day period requirement to again show that they've either completed or retained services to correct it. Should the property owner fail to meet that time limit, the city would then make the repairs as authorized by California state law, and the cost of those repairs would be billed to the owner. And we would follow the city would continue to follow the state's liens and rules regarding that as enumerated in state code. We also added tied this section into the section 1.05, which allows the citizens to have a hearing in front of the director, and that the hearing in front of the director would determine basically whether or not that the fines and fees are acceptable, or there should be some kind of mitigation, or there's no fines, right? Then that allows the person, if they agree with it, and then the city moves on, the director's, as it says in the thing, the director's thing is set, right? However, if somebody wants to say, I don't like the director's decision, they would still have to pay all the fees that would come up, which would have been how much it cost the city, because we're talking now after the city's already taken care of this, how much it cost the city for the repairs. Just like a traffic ticket, they would have to deposit that with the city, then they could request a hearing board that would go to the city manager. He would appoint a hearing board to hear their complaints. And again, we got some possible outcomes for the hearing board. So essentially, we're just giving them a bunch of rights beyond what the state says. And we're allowing them to have a process to mitigate certain issues such as trees breaking up the sidewalks or damage by a city snowplow or something like that, so that the citizens aren't just, it's not just coming from Sacramento, it's coming from people here, and we're giving you the time and the understanding.
So just to reiterate from the last meeting and to give a little context, the reason we're doing this, it's basically bad form for cities to restate California code in their municipal code, because then you have to adjust your municipal code every time the law changes. The state code gives citizens 2 weeks to fix their sidewalks, doesn't have an appeals process, and doesn't allow for negotiations if it doesn't matter who caused the damage. If it's in front of your property, it's the property owner's responsibility. And by putting this in the code and adding this additional information, we're trying to soften the blow and make sure that we're a little bit more compassionate and, frankly, are able to review the situation, because things happen. Snowplows hit sidewalks and trees that are probably a poor choice that were planted by the city a very long time ago. The city may have some liability in that, and that's why you have the appeal with the Public Works Director. So that's the context.
Thank you. Council?
Yeah, some questions for Chief. By director, you mean the Director of Public Works, correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay. Regarding enforcement, do you feel as if, Chief, City Manager, that given that we're hiring another officer, which I assume is a code enforcement officer? No, it's going to be a regular police officer. Okay. We'll have enough manpower code enforcement-wide to actually make a difference in the quality of our sidewalks? Because this is a somewhat time-consuming process to actually get it. And up till now, we haven't been doing a good job enforcing.
Well, so a couple things. There is not going to be a rush of, our code enforcement officer ticketing people and demanding sidewalks to be repaired all at once. I mean, we have some areas where we've got some critical damage to sidewalk that poses a liability for the city. And so we're going to roll this out slowly. But we've had issues with sidewalks, and the Public Works Director has found time to get out there and actually assess the situation and listen to the concerns of the property owner and then make his own assessment. And, we have adjusted the cost. In some cases, it's grinding an edge down on a sidewalk that's cracked or heaved. And so it's not a major repair. It's just some of these things can be fixed fairly cheaply. And that's part of the role of the Public Works Director, is to say, how do we get to a situation where the city isn't facing a liability issue at the lowest cost?
And then just to add on that, we're also putting out a flyer so that we're giving the information out to the public. We'll be putting it on our social media page so that people have a time to understand that, yes, we're going to start enforcing this, because we haven't had a code enforcement officer. So there has been a time period where there wasn't a lot of codes being enforced. Now we're going to have a code enforcement, as you said, for a long time now. So now we will let people get used to the idea that we are going to start enforcing this sidewalk law. So we'll get them out the flyers and the information and put it out there. But again, allowing the people to, and the directors and everybody, just kind of slowly get up to speed so that it's not such a, because it's not realistic to go out and go every single sidewalk that needs to be repaired in Mount Shasta. It still would take years just to get the contractors to do it. So we're going to hit the major points, and it's going to be a complaint-based, the way I foresee it is more of a complaint-based, where, hey, I'm complaining about this sidewalk, and then we go out to the business like we would in any municipal code complaint and say, yes, you're in violation or not.
So one final, and I don't know if you folks at this table have an answer. Maybe folks that have lived here a long time would know. There are some public commentators that think that the city has done a lot of sidewalk work in the past. And my impression is the only sidewalk work that the city has done would be those sidewalks that were damaged by the trees the city put in years ago. Some of these places would be right downtown. The city actually did the work to pull the trees, put new trees in, and then repave the sidewalk. And they might be doing that up here by Raymac and Point S and so forth. Does anyone clearly know whether the city has just laid sidewalks out anywhere in this town? I don't think so, except for those examples, right? It is something that has been done by property owners in the past.
Or not done.
Or not done at all, right?
I do believe there was a point where we had a small grant that allowed us to go and grind down some edges as a courtesy. You know, in some cities we'll do that, and you know, we're just, you know, with budget stretched, you know, if we have the opportunity to apply for grants for that kind of thing, we would do it again to lessen the burden, especially on those that can prove that, you know, they're low income. You know, and we'll keep an eye out for that, but we've got to start moving on and making sure the city isn't sued.
Chief, just a few questions. You talked about, well, first of all, City Manager and Chief, thank you for being a little more generous and compassionate relative to state guidelines of 2 weeks, stretching it to a month and a month, and having an appeals process. And I wasn't quite sure if I understood if the appeals process was only an after the fact, meaning if you didn't take care of it, we're going to come in and fix it, charge you, you have to put up the money, and then you can appeal it. Is there some manner, some way to go have that be in the after the first notice has come out?
Yeah, let me clarify that. So how it works and it's written in the municipal code is you can come to the director and say, I don't think I should have to pay this because blah, 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 blah. The director says, no, you have to pay this. Now, before they can go to an appeals hearing board, they must pay the fees or the fines or the cost. So how it works is that no appeals board hearing shall be appointed until all fees have been paid to the city. So once the director has made the decision, the city is bound by that according to how it's written. So they get to go to the director without having to pay, and they get to argue.
Right.
But once the director has made his decision, whatever, if they wish to take it further, they must now pay whatever the fees are that the cost that the city has, or they have to pay to have this done, and then they can argue that they shouldn't have in front of the appeals board, and then the appeals board can make their decisions.
No, I get it now, thanks. It's a two-step process.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think I know what you're getting at is, you know, essentially the first 30 days, and you haven't done anything. You're given an additional 30 days.
Right.
And it's clearly that, you know, the perception is at that point that the homeowner, property owner, isn't planning to comply. And so we have to force their hand and come in and fix it because they have not responded to all the correspondence from the city.
Okay. Thank you. Chief, you said there's a flyer coming out. Is that going out in water bills? How's that being distributed?
So we're waiting until we find out how council wanted. I presented it at the two council meetings before when I was advised to go ahead with this. So basically, we're going to, once we get the ordinance passed, we're going to go to a printing place, make up a bunch of flyers, and have them down at Public Hall. It would not be cost efficient for the city to make up enough to go out on every, because it's a pretty information, but we'll put out the information and say, hey, come to City Hall, pick up your packet. We can put a thing on the water bill going, hey, information package for sidewalks and that kind of stuff, and then it would be just a pamphlet for people to pick up. And we'll just make the information for them.
I have one more question, then I want to get back to dissemination of information to the public who really doesn't know what the heck's going on, and the value of an informed public when we don't have a good paper anymore that reports what's happening in our meetings, and I'll get back to that in a second, but I just had one last question. This was somebody who'd sent in emails questioning about the sidewalks and maintenance of them and citizens' responsibility, and I think that there was confusion about what maintenance meant as regards to snow removal from sidewalks, and I was pretty sure I understood that, no, you don't have to, you're not responsible for removing snow from the sidewalks relative to this ordinance in a residential arena. But I just would like to make
But
sure.
it is state law that people that own, they're responsible for clearing their frontages of snow. Now, nobody's walking around citing people, but it is absolutely the homeowner's responsibility to clear their sidewalks.
Residential?
Any.
Any?
Yeah, it's state law.
Well, I'm at the risk of stating the obvious, we all fail.
Every city does.
Yeah, we fail badly.
Yes.
I'm correct that we're not going to step up enforcement relative to when maintenance of the sidewalks, relative to cracks and broken areas. It's not going to change relative to snow clearing as well.
I think it would come down to if we had complaints about a property frontage that was a sheet of ice, we might knock on the homeowner's door and say, hey, you're responsible to keep this clear. Why don't you throw some rock salt down?
Thank you.
Following up on that, the problem with the sidewalks is that the city plows the street snow into the sidewalk, so it gets kind of a little dicey there. So, yeah, I think that's a frozen situation.
Okay. All right, we will open this up for public comment. Anyone from the audience wish to speak? Or public hearing?
Yeah, I'm actually interested in talking about the snow clearing. This was my first winter here in Mount Shasta, and I was noticing that when it comes to plowing the roads, the street I live on, I'm up on Old McLeod, we were the last to get plowed every time. And, in years past, I've heard that the past couple of years have been pretty mild, but I mean, with the amount of snow we had this year, I was stuck in my house for like 3 days at times because we were the very last street to get plowed. Is there a way that maybe in the future we can work where we change it up, like everybody kind of gets the short end of the stick when we have snowfalls like this? Yeah, thank you.
Terry, hold on. May I ask a question?
Sure.
McLeod and what's your cross street?
Realm. I'm up on Realm Road.
That's way, way, way up.
Is that way up?
Old McLeod and where?
That's county.
That's county?
Yeah.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
So what makes it county? What makes it the city and what makes
City
it?
limits.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's why?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks. Still, it'd be nice to do some. Oh, one more thing. Okay, this is another thing I noticed this year was the city plows. Can we start having them have chains on the plows? Because that's another thing. I was going for like a walk one morning. I was the only one out. And I noticed that everybody that was stuck on the road, they were flagging down the plowers, and a lot of the plowers would just pass by. They'd like wave and drive by. And then finally we got somebody to stop, and they were like, yo, do you have chains? And nobody had chains.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Johanna.
Okay. Hi, all. So I appreciate hearing that this.
Can you use your mic? There you go.
Sorry. I appreciate hearing that this particular ordinance does not apply to snow. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that the extension is being done for 30 to 60 days. However, when you look at all of this, and I sent you all a letter with some of the concerns, because this is a big topic, and we haven't fully, I haven't been fully been able to research it. But as I understand it, the proposed change to our Muni Code, the intent at the state level is to mitigate against homeowner damage of public right-of-ways for street and branches and things like that. And it seems that this solution of fining residents, and my understanding is it's from the date of the notice. So even if you appeal it, like even if you get your 30 days, the $2,500 a day, plus administrative fees, plus interest, plus all these other things, starts racking up from day one. And I don't know if that's a correct understanding or not, but the ordinance is vague enough that when I read section 1.05, it does imply that it goes back to the date of the notice. And what is the date of the notice? Is that when the property owner receives the notice? Are we going to get certified with signatures so we can make sure that the property owner actually gets the notice? Because I think that would be fair. These penalties may be up to, it could be $100,000 to $150,000, because the section 1.05 caps just I think it's the administrative fees or the penalties at $100,000. But on top of that, you have all the other fees and whatnot. So I've called some other cities in the Bay Area, and I've been told such fines are never actually imposed, and some cities actually have cost-sharing measures in place, including, the city picking up more of the stuff if the homeowner can't afford it. Will our insurance policies cover this? It seems that by doing this, the liability is shifting from the city to the homeowner for certain things. And we don't even have a list right now of existing damage at the properties. I know I have written some emails because I've had some damage over the years, but it's as it is written, there's some ambiguous, very subjective and open to interpretation clauses, and such like what is considered public convenience. That's very subjective, and I think that should be defined objectively if we're going to amend the ordinance. The fees are penalties not to exceed $100,000. This alone could be 25 to 50% of a property value here in Mount Shasta. Anyway, I would ask that you please review this a little bit further and give it some more consideration. And please make sure, I'd like to see email notification as well, because I think sometimes in the past we've had some issues, like I just got somebody else's water bill this week. So not everybody gets their mail. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Johanna. Anyone else wish to come up to speak? Come on up.
I'm not a resident, but I'm an observant arborist.
Can you state your name, sorry?
T.R. Black.
Thank you.
Just quick questions. Are you saying that there are private homes, but with city-planted trees up against their sidewalks?
This is more of a public comment where you can state your concerns, but it's not really a back and forth.
Okay, all right. Because in Los Angeles, which is a little town south of here, they've come up with some gigantic can't-solve problems because the city 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago planted a lot of trees they shouldn't have, came from Australia, not to disparage Australians. But what's happening is the roots are gigantic. They're breaking up the sidewalks, so certain people complain about the sidewalks, but they don't want to lose their trees because it has a massive effect of cooling, especially the valley. So there's a lot of back and forth. So if I'm a private citizen and I have a city-planted tree and it's busting up the sidewalk, the other thing to consider is repairing the sidewalk. If the tree's not removed and the roots are just going to keep growing, do you have an arborist that's going to tell you, hey, this is going to even be worse 10 years and 20 years from now? Do we remove the tree? And does the person or the city want these trees removed? And if so, what are you going to replace them with? So all I'm saying is there's a lot of things to consider, and that it's not just quite as simple as, okay, sand down the sidewalk and then the roots are going to bust it up again in 3 years. My experience is in the valley, wheeling my mom around in a wheelchair going, all over the place. We just made it fun, rather than get tripped up on this. But people that have vision problems and everything can trip over this. But anyway, I think it's the nature of what is the tree, what are the roots going to be in the future, and how does that affect the sidewalk? And then, is it the city, the homeowner? I think if you just get into blaming the homeowner and then, putting them up against the wall for the kind of money you were talking about, that's not really fair. But it's not fair for the city to have to put up with a lot of lawsuits about people skateboarding and flying through the air, not wearing a helmet. You know what I'm saying? You guys deal with all this stuff. So anyway, I'm just saying, be observant of what kind of tree is, who planted it, and what can be mediated to make it reasonably safe and reasonably use the trees for what good they are, rather than just, Thanks. Thank you. I love this place, by the way. I'm having a really nice.
Thank you very much. Anyone online wish to speak? All right, we will close public hearing. Back to council for discussion and motion.
Any desired changes? Any thoughts before I make this motion?
Not in these sections that we're dealing with.
All right, so my comment is that I think this is a fair and just way to approach what is, in different parts of town, a real problem. So, good job from the staff on this this issue. All right, so move to approve the first reading of CCO-23 to be determined, amending Mount Shasta Municipal Code Section 12.08, repair and maintenance of sidewalks, and move it to a second reading 2 weeks from now by title only.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And agenda item 11, approval of new police officer position funded with Prop 64 grant funds. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On October 24th of last year, City Council approved Resolution CCR 22-33, approving the application for grant funding of Prop 64 Public Health and Safety Grant Program. On April 19th, 2023, staff was notified of the successful awarding of the grant funding. This grant funding will continue to fully fund the community service officer position, as well as an entry-level officer position through 2028. The new grant funding also fully funds one additional police officer position to be assigned to the North State Major Investigation Team. Staff requests that we approve the authorization of the 7th officer.
I recently learned that we lost Officer Quick to bigger and better things. Is this replacing his position, or is this in addition to?
So right now we have one open position currently to replace the current position that Officer Quick vacated. This would be funding an additional 7th officer position.
Thank you.
Where'd Kyle go?
Emeryville PD.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Chief, we're getting 2 police officers. One's actually going to be a full-time police officer, and the other one's going to be in this NSMIT.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What is that, and why is that running through us? What relationship does it have to our daily policing duties?
So the North State the North State Major Investigation Team is the Siskiyou County task force that replaced when DOJ B&E vacated and no longer did task force operations. So these are the agents that are doing the trafficking. They're doing the investigation of the sales of fentanyl. They're the ones doing the undercover work. They're the ones working all the illicit narcotics in the county. How it benefits Mount Shasta, one, is we now have a member on there where we can give our information. We know it's from Mount Shasta. So we're getting a focus on Mount Shasta because we're having an officer there.
This officer
Yeah.
would be doing that task force duties, those task force duties full-time. They're not going to be like some on that and some working on our normal policing duties?
Correct. They're going to be at the task force full-time, so they would not increase the number of what we have on staff. We would still have our 6 officers that we would normally have.
Right.
This doesn't take away with what we're providing this city. This is allowing us to get a bigger benefit without detracting from what we currently give as the city.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
questions? All right, open up for public comment. Anyone from the public wish to speak? Anyone online? And closing public comment, back to council.
Wait a sec. This is a resolution, correct? Oh, great, thank you.
Oh.
That's what I'm looking for, Mayor. All right. Without further ado, move to approve Resolution CCR-23-11, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta authorizing a 7th sworn officer position with the Mount Shasta Police Department.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There are no outside meetings.
There is. Let me quickly. So I'm the Mount Shasta representative at the Collier Interpretive and Information Center in north of Wairika. We had a meeting about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and we actually made a major move to improve the website for that facility and hired a web designer for very reasonable costs. Something like $500 and $150 a month or $50 a month for maintenance. So that's my report on that outside meeting. The next one's coming up in a couple weeks and here in May.
For LTAC? What about LTAC? Should we give?
So, second one, regarding the library expansion and the committee for which the mayor and myself are part, how should I say, we put out for RFQ, request for qualifications, a notice, and received back 4 or 5 responses, and we narrowed our choices down to 2. One locally, Hummer, I don't know the full title of the company. The other one was Nolan Tam, an architectural firm in the Bay Area, who happened to specialize in library renovations and new construction. So we had a question and answer period with them today. Should I talk about the results? So we had a straw poll as to who to choose for our design team, who to hire, and it was a 3-3 draw at this point. So it's a bit complicated. We know that we have a reserve fund to hire and pay for a design group, but the actual build out and construction of the library is somewhat dependent on receiving grant funds sometime between July, well, actually more like September. So we will report back as things get clearer, both with respect to choosing a design team and whether we receive the grants to build this library out expansion-wise. In case people are wondering, we're looking at doubling the size of the library at this point. And get back to you as to whether that's going to be feasible. Right now, it's questionable.
I have good faith that we're going to get the grant funding, but we equal each other out. All right, moving to future agenda items and meeting. Are we able to speak on that? The outside meetings? Are we, Kathy? Yeah. No? No, sorry. Okay. Moving to future agenda items and meetings appearing on the agenda within 60 to 90 days. A, housing element 52223. B, budget 52223. C, vacation of Field Street to be determined. D, discussion and possible action McLeod Avenue parking prohibition to be determined. Future agenda items over 90 days, discussion and possible action, review of Chapter 13.95, extraction and exportation of groundwater from the city of Mount Shasta. I will be absent on the following meeting, so Mayor Pro Tem will be acting in my place. Any other items to add?
I've got a wild one.
Okay.
City manager, I said earlier that we, and council members, I had noticed earlier that our city paper has gone downhill relative to communicating any information to the public, what's going on in our meetings or what's going on in our towns. And in lack of that, despite my somewhat frequent haranguement of the reporters down that could possibly change that, I have failed miserably. And it occurred to me that, well, you know, maybe we ought to just consider, at least conceptually, putting out a simple once-a-month templated kind of a combination of what you're already putting together as notes, that stuff that ends up in our agenda packet, but a little more fleshed out, such that, and getting inputs from various, not to make an entire another job for you, but what people could look to as what's happening in town, what's going on, and this is all electronic. And I mean, folks, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that we have, between the emergency broadcasts of phone numbers and emails and text systems and our billing systems, we've got just about everybody in town, or certainly one heck of a lot of them, where we can communicate with them electronically. And once a month put out hey, here's what we've been doing. You've got concerns, and somewhat replicate a paper, but not with current events kind of thing, more just, here's what's actually going on in your town and what our issues are, and please come speak and let us talk to you, and you talk to us if you've got issues. And I wanted to see if anybody here on the council has any appetite for just, John, no.
A newsletter sounds great, but some staff member would have to be very motivated.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of, you know.
There is the weekly report that comes out. I
Yeah,
wonder
it's
if-
bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly. I wonder if we could modify that a bit so that it's not a lot of work.
We could. It takes a lot of time, and I'm buried. I'd have to know. I'd have to have more detail on what that would look like.
City manager, the old saying, I know not what I ask, meaning I don't have any sense of commitment that staff, precious staff time, it would take to go execute something like this. I don't know what this would entail. I simply wanted to have an agenda item relative to, well, let's take a look. Could we have other people work on it? Could we have high schoolers? Could we have some other volunteers? So it's not going to kill the staff. Is there some way to do this? Because we
Sorry, we don't
clearly
do
have a
public
problem
comment
of
during this time.
communicating to the public.
Look at the Soul Civic Minute.
What'd you say?
I was saying we don't do public comment during this time. I would be interested in exploring this. I would even volunteer my time to help.
May I speak?
Please.
I don't know if you recall, I don't remember who was on council at the time, but pre-COVID, I used to put out a quarterly newsletter. I had a lot of people in the community that participated. I had people from the museum and other local organizations that would submit articles and things like that, and it went really well for probably about a year and a half, and then people started to fall off and not participate as much. I'm certainly willing to try to put that out there again and see if we could do something, maybe not monthly, that might be a little bit over the top for staff, but if we were to do something like that quarterly, would you be open to that?
Great.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to affect this. I'm just trying to take a look at it and try to define. What'd she say?
Real estate agents? Real estate agents?
Yeah, maybe.
Real estate agents, it's a great way for them to promote Soul Civic Minute. Look at his Soul Civic Minute. They're doing it in Seattle, Washington. He's a real estate agent. And he puts it out in Seattle, Washington. I think it's every other week. And he just talks about what's
Would you mind just emailing us that information? That'd be great.
Would you like me to email you, Mayor?
Sure.
That's all.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Adjourned.